please share with our viewers what inspired you to embark this journey?
Yeah, so I guess when I first had an opportunity, I fell in love with sailing for starters, and I just loved being at sea and connecting with the ocean. And sailing's like, as complex as it is, it's really simple. It's eat, sleep, sail, what's the weather doing, rinse, repeat. And I just loved the adventure and the exposure to the ocean that I would get through sailing. And it was my first round-the-world yacht race as a crew member that I really started to see the effects of human impact on the ocean. And it wasn't just like an odd water bottle or an odd piece of plastic. It was literally sailing this boat through an entire sea of plastic. And we had to assign a crew member to the front of the boat to physically push the rubbish out of the way of the boat so that we could sail through. And that was over a decade ago. So I just became so passionate about it, so scared and terrified by what was happening. And that led me to launch the Climate Action Now campaign.
So in terms of the microplastics, the results of your recent journey was in 2022, right? In a collaboration with the scientists. So now in 2022, after a decade, what did you see?
Yeah, so I set myself the challenge of trying to become the fastest person to sail solo around Antarctica. It took me 2 attempts. On my first one, I dismasted, nearly died a bunch of times. My second attempt, I collaborated with researchers globally, and I was able to get the project endorsed as a national Decade of Ocean Science initiative through the United Nations. And we did a whole bunch of different sort of data sets and converted the sail locker in the bow of the boat into a micro lab at sea. And so through that, I was sampling for microplastics 24/7 the whole way around Antarctica. So I would do a 22-hour sample and then a 2-hour sample, but the whole of the ocean that I sailed was mapped with microplastics. And it took me a little while to actually get the results back from the researchers. I collaborated with the Australian Institute of Marine Science on that part of it. And when I got the results back, I was shocked about the fact that we found plastic in every sample the whole way around Antarctica. So I sailed through an area of the ocean called Point Nemo, and I'm closer to the astronauts in outer space than any human on any piece of land anywhere in the world. And we not only found plastic, but we found an above average amount of plastic for that area of the ocean. And to me, that's just screams that we're doing something so incredibly wrong for our environment. And it's microplastics, it's tiny, tiny particles. And I came across a statistic recently, and they say that what we see in the ocean, so the sea of plastic I sailed through, is less than 2% of the actual plastic in the ocean. So yeah, and we actually broke the data down even further and broke out fragments and fibers. And so we found an above average. So more than half, 64% was microfibers from the textile industry. And so the polyester clothing that we wear, the t-shirts, your average household, when they do a load of laundry, will release on average around 300 particles of microplastics into the waste distribution system. And then that'll eventually go overboard into the ocean because we don't filter it out and we send our discharge water overboard. So unintentionally, people around the world are impacting the ocean's health.
Yeah, this is so inspiring, and your action, and it inspires us and all people around the world, now volunteers, and not to stop and to be brave enough to, and to break the ceiling and do whatever it takes. And the result of your study is definitely shocking. The amount of microplastic is in the air and in the ocean, and do you think that the microplastic is one of the factors that might affect the rapid warming of the ocean? Do you see the connection that it might?
Yeah, there's actually been quite a few new studies getting released around the impacts of plastic pollution in the ocean, contributing significantly to climate change and global warming. Effectively, the plastic holds heat a lot longer. And so as our temperature's rising, we're losing the ice caps, which is out this section of the sun, which is cooling. And so we're getting less surface area reflecting, and we're getting more surface area holding that heat in, trapping that heat in, and contributing to that warming.
Yeah, it does sound quite scary, to be honest, but we believe that every crisis brings us a solution. So we have to be positive, optimistic, to look for a way out, and we think there are a way out. And what would you wish for to our volunteers?
I think the big thing to remember is that every single person can do something. It doesn't have to be massive to have a really powerful impact. You can do things like install a filter on your washing machine and capture the plastic before it enters the ocean and then dispose of it correctly. The other thing I think that people underutilize or undervalue is the fact that it's a game of supply and demand. So we have an absolute exorbitant amount of easy products on the shelves these days to make our life more simple, to make it more comfortable. And all of these products are supplied by the demand of the people. If people aren't buying them, they're not going to make them. So if we consider the fact that every time we spend money, we're voting for the type of future that we want, we have the power to change what impacts we create by choosing to purchase the sustainable, the plastic-free, the chemically-free, the more ethically sourced items, and create more demand for that industry so that we're seeing that transition come through. I think also it's important to note that as a community, the conversation's changing. And I think as an ambassador, as someone working in this space, it can be really daunting and overwhelming. And I kind of want to share this story. It's a really short story. But when I did my first circumnavigation around Antarctica, I purposely named the boat Climate Action Now so that I could force the media to use the word climate action now, because they weren't really talking about it yet. Yeah. And you were still considered a tree hugger or a weird hippie if you talked about climate change or global warming. And so I would do all these media interviews, and they would interview me about the fact that I was going for the first woman and that I was the sports star, because they weren't talking about the boat name or the climate action campaigns. And they would sort of ask me, anything else you'd like to add in your interview? And I would talk about it. And I'd be like, yeah, my boat's called Climate Action Now. And I'd go into it. And you could see the reporter just go white in the face, freeze, because they've been instructed not to talk about sustainability. 5 years between my two projects. So from the 2017 world record around Antarctica to the 2022 world record, I now have media coming to me because it's a positive story of sustainability. They're choosing to come and interview me around it, and I'm getting more media coverage because of the cause of the project, alternatively to what I had on the first record. And again, supply and demand, the media are only going to showcase the news that people want to watch. And so there's more community that are engulfed, there's more community that are passionate about checking our oceans, protecting our ecosystems so that we can all flourish together.
Yes. Thank you so much. We're so grateful. And I think most important is the voice that you use, and that it's like a ripple effect. You let this mission with your voice, saying, doing, and not stopping. This is what inspires me, that you didn't stop and then you speak up.
Absolutely. I think activism, and I think it should be positive, because we all see so much disastrous news and we see all the stats and we all know it's overwhelmingly bad, sustainability wise and climate change. And we all know we're part of the problem. But if we start focusing on solution thinking and solution orientation, then we're going to immobilize a group of people to actually stand up and take a change. And so that's what I'm all about. It's about how can we positively impact the communities around us? And that might be as simple as just talking to your kids about sustainability, about what happens to the plastic when they finish using that one container for that one few minutes so that they could have soft drink. And just explaining that life cycle of the plastic and what ends up in the ocean, so what ends up ultimately on our dinner plate because of the microplastic contamination in the food sources. So, small actions like that matter. And then you can go all the way the other direction of being a major activist, doing world records like me and being crazy and sailing around the Antarctic and the Arctic.
I love your creative approach, that you are so creative in your self-expression, and there is always the way of spreading the word and find a common ground with other people and is sharing this message.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.